Can you all hear me okay back there? Can you all hear me? Okay, I'm good? All right. Okay, Teesha Miller is the director of Jackson County's Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, PDMP. A PDMP creates an electronic database on opioids and other controlled substance prescriptions dispensed within a given jurisdiction. PDMPs help prevent a person from receiving multiple prescriptions from the same opioids or controlled substance, making it more difficult of these drugs to be abused. Teesha Miller has a passion for public health initiatives with experience in roles that focus on continuous quality improvement to impact health outcomes positively. Miller has served as a program manager for the Parent to Parent program and as Mark of Dime's NICU Family Support Coordinator at Children's Mercy Hospital and lead family faculty with the Vermont Oxford Network. She is a member of Building a Healthier Jackson County Advisory Board, the Jackson County Drug Commission, and the Regional Opioid Treatment Work Group. Teesha says her most important work is done in collaboration with her husband, Bradford Miller, in raising 4 beautiful children. Please help me welcome Ms. Teesha. 4 or 5. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for inviting me here. I heard a little bit of what was going on just a moment ago. Seems like you all just got through either witnessing dancing or were you actually dancing? Oh, a little bit of both? Okay. Okay, so if I need somebody to come up here and bust a move when we get a little bored, somebody can do that. Show of hands, show of hands. All right, we got a couple volunteers. I think what we should start with, an interesting question was asked before everyone joined us, and the question was, what is an opioid? And so we should start with that basic premise before we move into the presentation. Is that okay? And I'm very collaborative. I'm the type of person you can just raise your hand, throw something at me, snap, clap, whatever. As you heard, we have 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. So stop me how you need to, when you need to, and I'll be happy to accommodate any questions or elaborate further on something that's being presented, okay? So an opioid, I'm going to try to place it in layman's terms. Have you ever had a prescription for a painkiller that was the type where you needed to show positive ID, you received strict instructions? They come in schedules, usually 2 through 5, something like hydrocodone, Vicodin, Percocet, are we with you, Tylenol 3s? Everybody with me? Something like that, Norco. You know, that is an opioid, but by the same token, there are opioids that are non-legal, like heroin, fentanyl, carfentanil, things of that nature. So we're going to talk, we've heard a lot. Who hasn't heard of the opioid epidemic and work that's being done on the federal, the local, the regional levels? There's a lot out in the media right now concerning the opioid epidemic, and so this talk is to further the body of knowledge concerning that, to give you a little bit about history, where we've come from. If we understand where we come from, we can understand why we're here, and hopefully have an impact on where we're going. Okay? So this first statistic from the CDC says 91 Americans die every day from an opioid overdose. Okay? That's a lot, right? It's opioid, period. All inclusive. Every day. So before you write that down, I checked that fact and realized between the time when I first researched this and going to publication, that number changed. This is where we are now.
Yeah.
You mind if I look at that?
I would venture to say there are not 141 people in this room, right? So to put this into perspective, a group of this room or larger is dying every day from opioids. So why is that? There's two major developments, and if I'm in your way, let me know on that side. There's two major developments that contribute to where we are today in the opioid epidemic, and that started in the 1990s and the early 2000s. The Joint Commission of Healthcare, they're our body that accreditates the health industry, and they passed a requirement, or talked about a requirement that said for physicians and providers to look at pain as the fifth vital sign. So you may have noticed in the 1990s, early 2000s, in addition to checking your blood pressure, in addition to knowing your cholesterol, your HDL, and your LDL, the physician would ask you about pain, right?
Yeah.
And what happens when you ask someone about something, generally? You need to do something about it, right? You feel compelled to do something about it. So there was a recommendation to increase the use of opioids to relieve pain. Providers didn't want their patients to be in pain. Patients themselves don't want to be in pain. Show of hands, who wants to be in pain? Nobody. Nobody wants to be in pain. It just doesn't work that way. So what happened is the release of the extended release oxycodone. It was initially thought to have little abuse effect. They started, there was snorting, because of course whenever you have anything illegal, it can be misappropriated for something illegal. But there was IV use, injection became common, and it became the most widely abused prescription opioid by oxycodone. Now I recall having a root canal, and what was I prescribed? Right, fairly common, right? The question was, is that the same as Oxycontin? There are different derivatives, but the premise is it's a controlled substance. It's an opioid. And I don't expect you guys in the back, unless there's somebody who's really going to impress me and be able to read this graph from back there. But this is a graph charting prescriptions dispensed for opioids from 2002 to 2013. And is there a pattern that you can recognize? Just a sharp increase. Sharp increase.
What are analgesics?
Pain relievers.
That stopped in 2013.
It didn't stop.
No,
That was as far as that particular graph.
That's
went
what I
to.
meant.
Yeah. If you could imagine it continue on its trajectory, it's probably somewhere over here. And so what you do is you take a look back over 10 years to see if we can identify any trends that need to be addressed. And this is trending the opioid epidemic. There's no doubt that something is going on that we need to take a look at and that we need to address. So why are prescription opioids so attractive? Well, they give you that euphoria. You know, when I had my root canal and I took my oxycodone, I felt no pain. Trust me, no pain. And I'm the one who needs to feel no pain. Even though I'm 5'10.5", and I'm not gonna get my weight because you just don't ask a woman that. I don't want to feel pain.
No.
And so the benefit is that it relieves that pain. Secondly, they are legal, right? They're legal, they're approved by the FDA, and they are prescribed by doctors. So if it's prescribed by a doctor, it must be safe, right? Okay. So they were thought to be trustworthy and predictable, and the dosage is clearly identified on the pill. Now, I don't expect you to out yourselves today. I'm not going to get anybody in trouble, but I don't mind throwing myself right under the bus, okay? I don't care what they printed on that pill. When I took the first pill, and I still didn't feel quite right, what did I do? When you know better, you do better. At that time, I didn't know better. And so that's what I did to get relief. And also, if you're taking something that a prescriber prescribed to you, is written to you, and is in your name, are you a junkie?
No.
Are you a drug user?
Yes.
Are you a misuser? And I'm only using those terms for the purpose of presentation or putting thoughts in your mind that if using a substance that a provider, a licensed provider, gives to you, it doesn't give folks the thought of a stigma, right?
Correct.
You know, I'm not, I didn't misuse that drug? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. In reality, I did. So, here's some quotes. I mean, a doctor prescribes them to you. It can't be that bad, right? So here's a quote from someone who had their initial opioid exposure. Minutes after doing them for my first time, I felt like there was not a care in the world to me. Nothing and no one existed except for me and the amazing high I was feeling. And so what we can't understand sometimes is why someone who finds themselves in that situation would continue to use a substance. There was an amazing high. There was a feeling that that person had never felt before. And much like other things, food or anything else, when you get that feeling, some people with certain habits would want to continue to receive that feeling, right? Sorry? There is a physiological addiction to the substance, right? So I'm going to interject here, and I heard a talk from a physician, I'll get with you, and he talked about dopamine and how there was a basic level of dopamine in your body, and resting is somewhere around 50, and then when you eat, you know, it's like 92, so it's like, oh, okay, this is good. And then if you have sex, it goes to like 90, no, I got it reversed. When you eat, it's 94, when you have sex, it's 92, because eating was better than sex. In his story. And so when you use an opioid, it might give you a feeling that takes you from 92 to 10 times that, to 920. So now this dopamine level is like way high. And you're like, ooh, I can clean my whole house, and I can go do this and go do that and stay up for days. And then when that level subsides and it brings you back to normal, well, there's a gulf between 50 and 920. So what happens? Some want to pursue that 920 normal, so what do? Use again. Right, you use again. And the problem with fentanyl and other opioids is that it takes you from 920 to 9,200. I mean, it's such a overload for the system. So when folks tell you, and be sensitive to this, when there are people who are in the throes of substance use disorder and they say, I used to feel normal, understand what that calculation is in relation to. Yes, ma'am.
Like you said, the prescription is prescribed by the doctor. Says you can take it 6 to 7 hours. Like you said, you get a benefit, but you've been told that you can become addicted to it, and that's scary.
And also, some people don't believe, like, I would think, I'll never be addicted to that until you realize that it's like, how long has it been since I had that pill? That things can become quickly out of your control.
I was scared with the octopus. I only took it when it was prescribed, but I never take it 6 to 7 hours because I'm afraid of the addiction. I stretch it as far as I can until I really am in pain enough to take it. What about that?
Well, see, the goal is to keep you pain-free. And so what I would encourage you to do is have a conversation with your doctor that says to them what you're willing to share with me. I'm in fear of becoming addicted. I don't want to use this beyond what is okay for me, but I don't want to be in pain. Tell them, I've been stretching out as far as possible until I get in pain. And then between you and your provider, come up with the time schedule that works for your body. It may involve lab tests to see how it's in your blood, things of that nature, but you're having a conversation with your provider concerning your thoughts and fears, and most importantly, your health.
But I did that, and she was okay with me not taking it every 6 to 7 hours when I didn't just read. Okay.
So you did the right thing. You did the right thing. That's right, as needed. So there are unintended or unanticipated benefits of opioids that lead to misuse.
What's the difference in opiate and oxycodone?
We're talking about a similar thing. It's a class of drugs. So oxycodone, Vicodin, Percocet, heroin, fentanyl, they're all opioids. They're all opioids. No, that's okay.
Yeah.
So here the thing about 75% self-report that they self-medicate. Now some of this is due to psychiatric related issues. In other words, that euphoria. I want to feel better. I want to feel good. You know, I can't really handle life in this situation. I can handle life better when I have this on board. And then 85% of folks self-report that they use opioids to escape from life. It numbs me. You know, I don't have to deal with this, or I don't have to think about that, or I don't have to address some of the issues in my life if I'm taking it. And there's no difference, as you can see, between those who started using from a doctor's prescription and those who started using from illicit drugs, from drugs on the street. They had a similar effect. So how do opioids make you feel?
I couldn't think straight.
So there was difference. Someone said happy, you said dumb.
Yeah,
I could not think straight.
Couldn't think straight.
yeah, and your bowels are blocked.
She hit on a good point. There is something called opioid constipation. Opioid constipation, absolutely. You take them as prescribed. You could be unable to have a bowel. So these are actual quotes from, they made me feel like I could talk to people and not be scared or embarrassed to walk around.
So it affects anxiety, it reduces it. It's got a lot of.
It gives you the ability to act and do and move. It can for some people in ways that they didn't feel like they could normally.
Can I,
Sure.
well, is the medicine Xanax kind of similar?
No, that's not a controlled substance. It has totally different formulation. We could talk about that. One of the things, to your point, one of the things that opioids do is they can help you mask inside emotions. And again, from that empathetic heart, when you think about that, someone may be dealing with a past trauma of some sort, PTSD perhaps, a military person, sexual assault. And an opioid can help mask those emotions and help them to avoid the stress of life. Now, right about now, I might sign up for that, avoiding the stress of life. You know, you got water in your basement, and spending money all over the place, and the 17-year-old who feels like they're grown, you know, it's like, okay, let me go ahead and turn. Let me turn this direction. And I'm making a joke just to connect with you, but in ways that others don't do that. You know, that is their way of coping with what is going on in life. And I say that because you can have an empathetic heart, an aware mind concerning what folks are going through, and that'll help them to get to the second part of this talk, which is getting people into treatment and recovery and what we can do. Okay? So progress to a tipping point. This person says here, before they enter their first treatment program, and understand first is important, because sometimes it takes more than one attempt at getting away from the addiction or misuse in order to get completely free from it. They were purely seeking the drug to stay well, for that dopamine level, to be able to function. They were tired of being addicted, but couldn't stop on their own. I would get into withdrawal symptoms, and I needed to use because I would get too sick. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah, they're having withdrawals and they get so sick they can't take it. So I would beg, borrow, or steal just to be able to get money to get the opioids, mainly heroin or OxyContin, because detoxing on my own was too hard. And no one knew I used, so I had to be able to function, in order to be able to function every day. So we need to confront the epidemic. we've been focusing on supply side efforts. Okay, so she said that I am the director of the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. And what that does is an electronic database where every prescription in these jurisdictions that is dispensed goes into that database. So if a person who has received, let's say, 8 prescriptions from 4 different physicians goes to get another one, and their physician looks in the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, they can come and say, hey, Teesha, tell me what's going on. Let's talk about it. And what do you think will happen at that point?
You won't get no more.
Huh?
You won't get no more.
You won't get no more.
Go to the street.
Perhaps go to the street. But where else might I go?
Sit back with really good.
Another state. Well, Missouri was the last one.
Yeah.
You might go to treatment.
Yeah.
You might go to treatment. Right. You might go to treatment. You might have a physician who provide education for you. There's a crackdown on these pill mills. Missouri, up until recently, yes, sir.
What's the difference between drug abuse and alcohol abuse?
Abuse is abuse.
You got illegal abuse and you got other.
But it's still.
Well, there's legal and illegal with alcohol, because if you think of teens,
Right.
you know, I see plenty of teens who are using substances that they have the right to use at that point. But there's a lot of difference in how people in society view different substance use disorder. And that's what the term is, substance use disorder. Because irrespective of what the substance is, there's a misuse or a disorder that needs to be addressed. You know, and some people quantify it. Oh, well, if you're doing perhaps an alcoholic might not be as bad as a drug user, or a drug user might not be as bad as an alcoholic. Or if you use marijuana, that's better than if you use heroin. You know, there's these, and that's society's moral blanket that they're laying over top of the problem. The truth of the matter is, in order for us to be a well-functioning, healthy society, we need to address all forms of substance use.
So you hear about people that go to treatment for heroin, and they give them methadone, and then you hear they're addicted to that. Methadone helps them get off their heroin.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. So it's called medically assisted treatment, and there are different prescriptions that a person can receive. Suboxone, methadone are 2 of the most popular. And so the common thought is that they're trading one addiction for another. But when you actually understand it, the methadone or the Suboxone helps to block the receptors. So if that person goes out, and let's say that this particular day, I don't have the willpower, or I don't have it in me not to use. When they use, if they don't get that 9,200, they don't get that 920 that they would have previously received. And so methadone is and can be a long-term treatment, and I think people, especially laypersons, don't necessarily understand that. It appears on the surface as if they traded one addiction for another. But that is as if, because my father's diabetic and this is what's in my mind, it's him needing his insulin to live his life the way that he needed to live and be alive for that period of time. It's different, of course, because insulin is, you know, physiological. You didn't do anything for that. It's not a voluntary thing. But I just want to kind of give you some perspective as how methadone helps that person through this.
Misconception from different television shows that the methadone, they get addicted to that.
So I previously worked at Children's Mercy Hospital, and we would have infants, babies who were born addicted. And to see them going through withdrawal is something that is hard to get out of your mind. But the treatment for that is to provide that baby with methadone or with Suboxone, with something to help to alleviate and have those binders not receive, so that that baby can grow and nurture and not be frozen. That's a good question. I'm gonna have to skip up a little bit. So have our supply side efforts worked? Well, kind of yes and kind of no. Just like anything else, you know, when you implement great programs and treatment and things of that nature, you can see, you know, some things work and some things didn't. So from a quality perspective, we're going to plan, do, study, act, repeat. So you're like, well, didn't you just try this? Well, yes, we tried that, and that worked for this subset of people. So now we're trying additional tools. So there's not, I want to stand and say there's not a one-stop shop. There's not a one tool. The prescription drug monitoring program is not going to solve this in and of itself. And I run that program. Not going to happen. Not going to say that. Well, okay, so with medically assisted treatment, will that solve it? Not in and of itself. Just like everything else, how many of us have the exact same car? No, we're not driving the exact same car, but we all have it. Perhaps we do have a car, and it serves a purpose for getting us to and from where we want to go. So it's a similar thing. We have to develop different tools in our arsenal to address this from all different ways. But there are some unanticipated effects of the supply side, which are when Oxycontin and oxycodone had stigmas attached to that, there were drugs to replace it, right? So what happened is, you know, the drug companies are not totally at fault. They're not totally, I'm not letting them off the hook.
99.9%.
Then I didn't let you left the percent. I'm not gonna let them totally off the hook, because if we had, if we had a collective, if we had a greater, broader access to health care for everyone, and this is me on my soapbox, you know, then perhaps this statement wouldn't be true. Maybe it would be, I don't know. But the statement is that it became easier to find heroin than good oxys. So what happens, they changed the formulation on oxycodone, and so then users went to heroin. Not only easier, but it's cheaper. You know, there was, at one point, it would cost about $50 to $100 to source it on the street, when you can get an equivalent high for about $10 in heroin.
When there was a heroin addiction that was all of in the 70s, everybody was just on the streets, Did that get cured and the people stopped using it, so now they're going to oxy and now they come back to heroin and it's the same?
Nope, and I have a, let's go down here. Before we go there, I'm going to say heroin is cheaper, it's easier to get, it's easier to inject, and it has been perfected from the 70s.
And it's back.
It's back. And it actually never really left, just different subset of people were using it, but it's purer than it's ever been before.
And since it was given to, it was being used by a subset and not the people out in the community where it had it down, the younger people, and you know, those were the people that were sitting on the streets. It has become this epidemic that we must take care of this very moment.
Let's address that. Let's address that, because that's the elephant in the room, really. Is that, you know, there are other epidemics that have hit communities with epidemic proportions, aka crack, and we didn't have federal money moving. In fact, there was a charge toward criminalization. You know, what we see with this epidemic is there is not one subset of the population that is untouched. Okay? So back in the 70s, if the data's there, I didn't see it in my research at Children's Mercy, but now you see babies, and I'm talking premature, from neonates straight out of the womb, all the way to geriatrics.
So you're saying children were not addicted on heroin when they left?
It was said that more men were using than women. Now we have men using, women using, we have men incarcerated, women incarcerated. So the prevalence today is much different than it was in the 70s. That's what the data suggests. Now, I was born in 71, so I can't testify legitimately because I was 7, right? And so, exactly. And if you go back today, we have neonatal abstinence syndrome. There's whole wards and wings dedicated to babies who are born addicted to stuff. Right.
But a lot of the opium now is given by the doctors.
So here's what happens. Here's how, and one of the crux of why I came before you today. Because you can get these prescriptions legitimately, right? And I'm gonna ask you to out yourself. I'm gonna do all that today. Bless you. I hope that's bless you and like, I am not your person in case of emergency. We'll call on you. So I had knee surgery. I think I was like close to 30. I had knee surgery, right? I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back out, blah, blah, blah. Had those pills put up where? Where I put them?
Medicine
Medicine cabinet. Right? Okay, then a few years later, I had a women's issue. Had that surgery, got those pills, put them where?
Medicine cabinet on the shelf.
In the medicine cabinet. And I never looked back. I never ever thought about it again. And I'm not asking you to out yourselves, but I can tell you because I have 27, 26, 21, and 17-year-olds. So when I accepted this position, I was sitting at home with the dinner table talking about it with my husband. And I was like, there's these things they have called pill parties, where people bring whatever pills they have, and they took part. They put them in a bowl, right? And then your high is going up, and you get you a handful of whatever pills are in this bowl. And I'm thinking, I'm telling my husband something, right? And my 17-year-old was like, yeah. I'm like, okay, don't overreact. You want to overreact? What do you mean, yeah? Son, that's been going on for years.
What did you say? I missed that.
Yeah, they have a pill party. Where you get the pills that are your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles. You go and use the restroom and you get in people's medicine cabinets and you get whatever it is they have that's residual in their cabinets, and the kids bring them to these pill parties. And they take them. They take them. So I said, oh, this has to be some newfangled stuff. Let me call the oldest one. I call her C-section number 1. I call C-section number 1. Have you heard about these pills parties? Xavier said, blah, blah, blah. She's like, yeah, Mom. And so I said, well, Kristen, please tell me you never went to a pill party. And she said, I did. I failed. I said, okay, so what pills did you take? And she starts laughing like there's no tomorrow. What pills did you take? She said, I took your birth control pills. Why did you go to the pill party first? She's like, well, I wanted to go. I wanted to see what was going on. She said, that's why you got number 2. She right. I wanted to see, and I wanted to see what was going on. I said, well, did you put your hand in the bowl? Did you take pills out? She's like, no, I didn't. I did, but they've been doing that for years. You know, and so what has happened, to bring me back full circle, is that it's prescription. It's legitimate. And so people don't feel like this is something a doctor prescribes. It may not have been prescribed to me, but it was prescribed. So it can't kill me, can it? It can't pain me, can it? Yes. And where are they at? It's grown so rapidly because heroin has grown so rapidly because all these other opioids have saturated. And I mean saturated. There wasn't one person in here, if I remember right, that hadn't heard. And I didn't ask you to out yourself and say if you received a prescription yourself. But there was a recent story on the East Coast where it said in this particular town there was enough opioids prescribed for every man, woman, and child to have one every day for 100 and some odd days. Come on. A whole town? It's out of control. So the practical factors. The stigma's been reduced. It's a prescription thing. You don't see. If you go, and I would implore you to do so, go volunteer and look at a treatment center. You know, you'll see people who look like me, people who look like you. Average, normal people who need assistance. Now, I can say in the late 70s, there was like this stereotypical user look, right? Am I making that up?
Right.
The person didn't have a job.
Yeah.
The person, clothes might have not been the best. Things of that nature, right? That's not what we're seeing today. It isn't. There are functional substance use disorders, and this is one of them. Here's the scary part. For this particular person, there was a group. Every single person they knew that used heroin, that used pills, now uses heroin. Also, every single person I know that uses heroin uses it intravenously. More people than I can count who I never thought would ever even try are now shooting it up.
Is there a legal use for opioids? Say arrested.
Well, no. So if I have my prescription from, let's say, my knee surgery, and I get pulled over and I have my prescription, that's a legal opioid prescription.
But you got someone else.
That's not legal.
Right.
You should not be in possession of someone else's opioids.
And you're allowed, but they say, may cause accidents, operate a vehicle or something like that on there, but that's still legal, taking them in.
Well, right. It does say may cause drowsiness, don't operate motor vehicle, things of that nature. And I think Tiger Woods was probably a recent example of operating a motor vehicle, and he said that he had some prescription medication on board. But by the same token, they tell me drinking a Dr. Pepper every day isn't a positive thing, and I can't seem to waylay that.
But I mean, you're not supposed to drink and drive. So, but you can take these and operate a motor vehicle.
Well, your doctor might say, depends on your situation. Because for my most recent surgery, I wasn't allowed to drive for 2 weeks.
Right.
So of course you mark those days, especially for someone who has a 17-year-old driving around. It's like, okay, I didn't teach this boy anything. You mark your days, and you don't want to be impaired when you're driving. But who among us can be the best judge of that sometimes? You're like, I'm fine, I'm okay, and it turns out you're not. So you should be totally off of this.
Or enough part of this.
No. Meth is a whole different talk, and I can send it to you if you like. It's still very prevalent. And what has happened, if you want a really brief update with meth, is a while ago there were a lot of meth houses, and you'd see people's houses catching on fire and blowing up and things of that nature. And the reason you're not seeing so much of that anymore is because it's actually being manufactured in Mexico and then brought in by the cartel. That's what I recently did a talk with a member of the DEA. So if you look at the state of addiction, you can get more information on that. It's a sophisticated operation that takes it out of the local. That's not to say there's no meth being manufactured in houses anymore. It's to say it's more likely being brought in as cocaine was back in the day.
Okay, well, the football players that have injuries, they were saying that the opium thing is worse than if they could take the weed marijuana. Because they were saying they didn't need it as strong as what the doctors are giving them. But
Marijuana is illegal.
that's
Even
what
though
they
some
say.
states have legalized it, it's a federally
Right. And that's what
illegal.
they say.
Right.
The opium is stronger on their system to mess them up, but it's legal.
Right.
But if they did the marijuana,
They
it
would
would work the
risk.
situation,
Potentially.
but they would go to jail.
You have to put that in there. Like, you can't say that. you can't say 100%. And that's where the rules of this land,
What did you say?
abide. We have to be bound by the rules that govern us. And right now, what we need to do is take a look at the difference between heroin and how we've used it in the past and how we need to use it in the future. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I have always been hard. I mean, if they can give me anything and nothing seems to work in my system. I mean, once I try something for 30 days or however long they give me, it doesn't do anything with the pain. So then I'll wait, I'll wait maybe 60 to 90 days, and I'll go back to my doctor and I'll say, okay, that didn't work. But now there's really nothing that they can give me. There's nothing that they've ever been able to give me that works the pain. So there's probably a lot of me out there, and that could be the reason that people are becoming addicted.
100%. I mean, no one wants to be in pain. And so, as you said, you had these responsible conversations with your provider. I'm in pain, help me. Okay, we'll give you this. You take that and it works for a few days, or maybe it works for a week, and then it doesn't work anymore and you're back in this cycle. Off the whole beaten path, there's something that is coming down the pipe that might actually be a benefit for you, although it is not covered commonly by insurance. And that's the genomic sampling, where you could go in and have these very intensive tests that give physicians more details than you ever want to know about what's going on with you. And I think sometimes that genomic testing is ahead of what they can. I'm not going to say I think I know, because I went in, I had the testing, and they're like, oh, you have X, Y, Z. Okay, what's the treatment for that? We don't know yet. Right. So, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry that you're in that position. There's a lot of different other therapies. Perhaps you probably tried them all, massage, yoga. I've seen this one gentleman at work, he gets hit with these rods, I guess, and they cause very intense bruising, but he has pain relief for like 3 weeks.
Would you like to say?
Those are sanctioned
GENOMIC. So the supply side efforts cannot exist alone. We're not going to, I don't think if you talk about big pharma and these pharmaceutical companies are making significant profits from the use and prescription of these drugs, I don't think that's going to be curbed 100% anytime soon. And understand the demand for these drugs is essential to developing treatment. If we can better understand how these drugs work in our bodies and how different bodies respond to them, then perhaps we can develop different treatments to them. So there have been statements, calls to action. You've seen it all over the place. The president has issued an opioid epidemic treatment protocol that's going into place. There's one in my county that I come from, Jackson County. Missouri is having summits all across Missouri concerning opioids. There are states that there's task forces that are being formed, consortium meetings. I want to increase awareness and perhaps reduce stigmas. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in doing all that, that does nothing to take away or to shine light on the pharmacies and the pharmaceutical companies making all this money off pushing these prescriptions, or offering vacations, doing whatever they do to entice these doctors to give these prescriptions, and having these doctors write these prescriptions and do what they do to give the prescriptions to the patients.
So what has happened is a few states, and we're not sure if we're going to be ones joining us, I don't want to get out in front of that, but a few states have actually sued the pharmaceutical industries. And that is looking like it might be an effective deterrent to some of those pills showing up by volume in those states. And then secondly, there's a prescription drug monitoring program, like I told you before, that helps doctors to have conversations. But the secondary side, or of the executive orders, that executive order Eric Greitens has signed, establishes a PDMP that looks at the prescribing habits of physicians in Missouri. And it looks to say, well, wait, if physician A treats a population and they prescribe, let's say, 10,000 scripts in a year, but physician B treats a similar population in a similar locale and they prescribe 200,000 opioid prescriptions in the year, then there's going to be some questions that physician B might have to answer concerning their prescribing habits that might even lead to criminalization. In other words, charges.
But does that look at the individual doctor and how many prescriptions?
Yeah, the
they're writing?
individual doctor.
Is that what you're saying?
So this doctor wrote 10,000 scripts. This doctor wrote 200,000 scripts for a controlled substance, and they have similar patient population. They operate in a similar jurisdiction. This doctor is going to have to answer questions about that, potentially suspending their license, criminal charges, things of that nature. So it's looking at those trips that you might take to be enticed to, and that's, I believe, a small percentage. You know, I think most doctors are trying to adequately and appropriately treat the pain of their patients. And then the third arm of that is treatment. You know, right now, you have to have, we don't have enough treatment agencies. We're looking at sober living. We're looking at additional treatment agencies. We're looking at starting these types of substance use programs in prisons. You know, so before you get back into an environment that might be troublesome for you. So there's a lot of work being done, and I'm not to say that there's a lot of good work that needs to still occur. No, I can speak to what we're doing so far. Because right now in the United States, 12.5 million people misuse a prescription opioid. That is staggering.
Is it true that more people die from opioids than from heart attacks, from car accidents?
That's right.
From everything.
You're grouping it together. Grouping it together. More people. You see that earlier, that 141 per day. And that number just changed in 4.5 weeks from 91. So it's continuing to be a public health issue. This is why. We're almost done here, so I know you guys are tired. We're going to talk about the power of doubling. Who's familiar with Intel computer? Intel computer was a processor that started like way back in the day. When I was in school, the computer for the school was about half the size of this room. You know what I mean? Like back in the 70s, you didn't have these little compact computers. But what happens is the technology doubled. They were figuring out how to make those processors faster and faster, right? And better and better. And so it would just double and double. And now, I don't know where my phone is, but it's in here somewhere. Now I have this little pocket device that I can see people, talk to, you know, text, send documents, sign them, all that, right? It doubled. So let's talk about that. You have this chessboard here, right? And you put a grain of rice on the first square, and then you double it in every square. You see what's happening? By the time you get to the middle of the board, what is it? It's out of control. You don't even have room on the squares to hold the grains of rice, right? And that's what happened with heroin and opioids. And let's just use doubling by year, not by every day. So if we take that 91, which we already know is an outdated number, and we double it, that goes to 182 Americans dying every day, right? Let's take that 182 and we double it, and we just keep on going. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. End of the 5 years, if we don't do anything, if we just watch it double, like the computers, you have 5,824 Americans dying every day. That's so gross. Eventually, it's gonna get out to the point where we're just sinking. We're all just sinking.
So like, do they
So-
take them, like, to commit suicide too?
Especially if they have toxicology reports come back that is a contributing factor to the death, that would count.
But most of them are accidental because they don't know they're so doped up, or is that how?
Accidental deaths, not always, be with other folks who think you're asleep, you know, and they, yes ma'am?
We can't hear the question, so keep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
She
can't hear
said-
the question, so we can't.
I apologize. She
Yeah.
said, were the deaths accidental? Are the deaths accidental because they take the drugs and then they overdose, so they've accidentally committed suicide? And I was explaining that not always, you know.
For some of the football players, allow them to check their brain because they've been taking medication legally, but
So What happens is, I don't have information on that, so I can't speak to that directly. So when you think, I wanted that previous statistic to be sobering. I wanted you to think about that, and think about that in terms of actual people. You know, that's a lot of people, that's communities just wiped out at one time. And so we have to do something. And there's this thing, and I've not canoed before, but I love this story. So they say, if you're canoeing, and you who canoe, check me on this. They say if you're canoeing and you hit rough waters, you have to do one of two things. You have to paddle, or you don't. Is that right? You got to paddle out of it, or you might tip your canoe. We have got to paddle out of it. There's, no matter who it affected or didn't affect, no matter how they responded before or not, you know, we have to promote awareness. This is something that's taking over all aspects of society. They're giving young people all the drugs. I got a fair amount myself as well. You know, to where I had to say, okay, I don't need that. You know, I need. Right.
Because, you know, I've dealt with having young sports players. And, you know, they get injured and the first thing they do is they're handing them the drugs and giving them the drugs. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think you need all this. you know, you can
come on back.
Yeah.
You know,
pull them back.
You might need this.
You have to control.
And you have to, that's why I said we have to promote awareness. So the parents, the grandparents, the aunts, uncles, cousins of some sports players, because sometimes sports players are pushed through it. They'll go ahead and grab a couple of these so they can be out there the next week, right? I want my stats, I need to be recruited, you know, things of that nature. We have to be vigilant in slowing them down. We have to discard every prescription that we still have in our homes that is not currently in use or not prescribed for use right now.
And don't store it in the bathroom.
And definitely don't store it in the bathroom. I did not learn that. Do not store it in your, people are going through people's medicine cabinets. And you all are in here going through people's medicine cabinets. I'm just kidding. People do, they're going through people's medicine cabinets and they're sourcing. You know, you might think a young person or anybody came to your home and they asked to use a facility. What's your biggest worry? That it's clean and that there's paper in it. You know, that's it. I never thought that the concern was something in there that I'm not even thinking about anymore. So discard them. Get them to your nearest prescription take-back place. Let me know. I'll send you a bag that you can pour them in and discard it in trash that animals won't be affected by it. Yes, ma'am.
I read a report to get rid of the unwanted medicine. You take your coffee grind, you put that unwanted medicine in it and put water in it, and it dissolves all of it.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, but I do know that we have a specific formula in our bags that will break down all of the different medications that you can put in there, and it won't be harmful to the water supply, nor will it be harmful to any animals, like if animals get in the trash.
You can take that to the police station.
You can take to the sheriff's department police station in in Missouri, and it's not in place yet, but we're working with Walgreens so that the same place you go to get your next prescription, you can take back your old prescription and things of that nature. Educate yourself and others, and lastly, help paddle. The information that you have, the knowledge you have, I believe this PowerPoint is going to be shared electronically or made electronically available. Share it. Have the conversations. Talk with people in your communities. Let them know. We want to increase awareness. We want to provide advocacy for policy. And then we definitely want to advocate for more treatment, more sober living, more universal health care for folks to be able to find themselves in trouble, to be able to get out of it. So, definitely do not flush it down the toilet. Definitely. And a lot of people do that thinking that it's okay, but that we put it into our water supply. And that's not what we want. So do not flush. Do not go through the water treatment. Yeah, you do not do that. Please don't do that. And one other thing, so this is my family. I thank them, thank God for them. They're the reasons why I do this thing. But recently, I had an experience not too long ago where my father passed away. And I was unsure as to what to do with the medications that he had. And he had some pretty strong ones because he had a heart condition and kidney disease. So I loaded him up and drove him back from Kentucky, back to Kansas City, where I'm from. And so when I was sitting on the panel of this DA, he's like, so you transported drugs across state line? I didn't know. I didn't know what to do with them. You know, so make sure, because a lot of times you're not thinking, especially in times like that, you're not thinking clearly. But if you have a loved one, pardon me, on hospice, they can provide some pretty strong medications, like morphine, fentanyl, things of that nature. And those medications have a very high street value. So make sure that even if you can think about it in that time, that those medications are locked up, brought together, and disposed of properly. Okay. Can I introduce those people? Okay. So this is my partner in crime. It's my husband Bradford. And the kiddos are grouped by color of their shirts. Our oldest is in red. Kristen is her husband Ben. Their son Josiah here. And then Nicholas in greens. And Jasmine's the next to the oldest. And her boyfriend will. I guess I gotta get a picture. And then her daughter Layla. And Xavier, he's our baby he's premature. He was born what they call late-term preemie, totally accidental. I just thought I had, nothing was going on, but he was preemie in the NICU, 8 pounds as a preemie, so they were borrowing things from the Well Baby nursery. And now, as you can see, he towers over all of us. I think he's about 6'2", maybe 6'3".
Is that the 17-year-old?
Yeah. 45.
My son said.
So those are the people.
But he was born before she took your pills.
He was. But he's the one who basically kind of schooled me on how the youth are really engaging pills that are left behind and how they get them and what they do in the pill fight. And she confirmed, they all went to the same high school. And so she confirmed that it was the same when she was in school, that they've been doing that for a while. And that was, I thought I was on it. So for a strict mom to find out you didn't know something, is quite a problem. We have other questions?
Where do we get those bags that's voting for pills from?
So I have my business card, and if you'll email me, I'll be happy to get something out to you. Yeah, absolutely. I just put it up here on the table. Thank you, God. I'll bring it to you. Thank you.
Thank you.